Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Green Flag. I'm your host, Lukas. Wacker. With me, as always, we have Kyle Cushman. And in today's episode, we've got a bunch of news to get to on the IndyCar side of things, and as well as our NASCAR Indianapolis Road Course Fantasy Preview. So a bunch of stuff to get to on today's episode. Going to be a fun one, as we'll get to the fantasy episode in just a little bit. We'll get to that portion in a bit, but we'll get to the news and notes in 1 second. But how you doing today, Kyle?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Looking forward to this one. An exciting doubleheader weekend for IndyCar and NASCAR. We saw them try it out a bit last year with the Xfinity Series and IndyCar on the same weekend doing some stuff there. And this year, even more so with the Cup Series doing the road course in addition to IndyCar and in addition to the Xfinity Series. So really excited to see this weekend just in general for motorsports and how everyone kind of working together looks in terms of viewership, in terms of how all the races go, because we've got a great IndyCar championship battle heating up with 5 races to go here, end of the regular season in NASCAR as well. So a lot of great stuff coming up this weekend.
Yeah, huge doubleheader on the cards at the Brickyard at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Going to be a very action-packed weekend there on the road course, but very much looking forward to it. And we'll break that down in just a little bit. But today we start off the episode on a bit more of a sorrow note. And it's unfortunate we have to bring this news that's happened over this past week. But our thoughts and prayers go out to the family and friends and everybody involved in the motorsports community to the loss of legendary motorsports commentator Bob Jenkins. He was the voice of the Indianapolis 500 for many, many years, Indianapolis Motor Speedway for many, many years, did some NASCAR calls, obviously, as well. Hugely well known and well respected within the motorsports industry. And he sadly passed away this past week after an 8-month battle with brain cancer. So terrible loss there. And we wish our heartfelt condolences to the family and friends of Mr. Jenkins. It was, we've heard some legendary calls and the highlight packs and the promo reels for everything that he's done over the years. And it's going to be, he's going to be sorely, sorely missed. So I wanted to preface that at the beginning of the episode. We always want to do that for anybody in the motorsports community that's, contributed to the legacy of motorsports. They're such a valuable asset to the community, and they've done a great job, and they're very much overlooked when it comes to the broadcasting side of things. And for Kyle and I, being broadcasting sport media students, this one hits a little bit more closer to home in some respects. So this is a sad day and a tough loss for the motorsports community, Kyle.
Yeah, he's been the voice of motorsports for so many people growing up and being with ESPN and ABC through the 80s, 90s, early 2000s. Like some of the greatest moments in motorsports history, and specifically in North American motorsports history, his voice is the one attached to those. So a really tough loss here. And hopefully a lot of great stuff coming up on the broadcast over the weekend, commemorating and celebrating Bob Jenkins this weekend. But yeah, a very, very tough loss, and somebody that's legacy will live on forever in those calls attached to some of these greatest moments that we've ever seen in NASCAR and IndyCar as well.
Yeah, for sure. They're going to, as Kyle said there, they're going to do a promotional and a tribute piece to Bob Jenkins and his legacy and his career in the booth for broadcasting. So we're going to be very much looking forward to watching that and seeing what they put together. I believe I saw Scott Miller was the person that's going to be voiceovering. Of course, he's battling his own health issues right now. So it's going to be Robin Miller, excuse me. It's going to be a fun little thing that they're going to be doing that. So expect that on NBC this upcoming weekend for Bob Jenkins.
Yeah, but we'll and just finally on it, I hope it's for both IndyCar and the Cup Series broadcast as well.
100%. If it's not, that's a travesty, but I think that they'll probably take the appropriate measures.
Given his legacy with both, but
exactly. Yeah. Let's get into the news and notes, though. We'll start off with IndyCar today. We don't usually do that, but it's some pretty big news that's not officially confirmed, but it's all but confirmed.
It's confirmed.
But it's from the Team Penske stable and the Meyershank Racing stable, as well as Simon Pagenaud appears to be on his way out of Penske Racing at season's end, according to multiple reports. Motorsport.com learns, and he has accrued 11 victories over his time with Team Penske, of course, a championship as well, an Indianapolis 500 victory. Great success for Simon Pagenaud with Penske Racing, but that seems to be coming to an end at the end of 2021. And just 5 races time. It's going to be a short-lived kind of end here for Pagenaud, but he's going to be reportedly joining Meyer Shank Racing to fill the vacant number 60 ride from Jack Harvey. Of course, he's going to be partnering Helio Castroneves as a result of that, and that's a huge addition to that Meyer Shank Racing stable and that lineup. A very veteran group that they're going to be having most likely for 2022 with Helio Castroneves and Simon Pagenaud. I don't think you can really get a better duo really per se in the sport of IndyCar than that. But of course, we know Jack Harvey was leaving on his own terms. He's leaving the team. We learned that about maybe a couple of weeks ago or something like that, it seems. And seems like Simon Pagenaud is the guy that they have tabbed to take over that number 60 car. So a huge move here. Penske has a ride open now for next season, it seems, and it's going to be a very fun domino effect here, as per usual with anything in motorsports silly season. We've come to learn there's no short of the possibilities of people switching teams and joining things that we wouldn't really necessarily believe at the beginning of the season, but at the end of a racing season, a lot of things can change, and this is just certainly one of them. So Simon Pagenaud on the move, on the way out of Team Penske to reportedly Meyer Shank Racing, Kyle.
Yeah, and this is a huge one. I think a lot of people expected Pagenaud to re-sign probably on a 1-year deal with Team Penske there. And there's a lot of different ways that you can look at this move. You can look at the IndyCar season as a whole. You can look at what it means for both Meyer Shank and Team Penske. You can look at the upcoming LMDH programs and what that means, and the IMSA programs that both of those teams have. So there's a lot of different ways to look at it, beginning with the IndyCar season. Meyer Shank Racing going with, for starters, expanding to 2 full-time cars next season with Castroneves, and now expecting to add Simon Pagenaud to that. And that's a very, very strong duo. But I think most importantly for it is the Indy 500. And you think about, for example, just this year, looking, of course, Castroneves winning in that entry, but also if that race went a couple of laps longer, Simon Pagenaud would have been right there for the win as well. And so Meyer Shank Racing all of a sudden has winning capabilities for the Indy 500 and arguably has the 2 best drivers at that circuit in the field in those cars as well. So that's going to be a huge thing to watch going into next year's Indianapolis 500 as well. I think this is a big get for Meyer Shank Racing in addition to the IndyCar stuff as well. Like I mentioned, because of the IMSA program, it's not just IndyCar for Meyer Shank Racing. They have their prototypes in IMSA, and the LMDH is coming down the road. So this is going to be a huge get for them and their program there as well for when they have those endurance races and they have that extra seat available. That's going to be big there as well. But it also isn't just Meyer Shank for this. It's also the Penske effect here. And does Penske decide to keep that 4th seat, or do they decide to go back down to 3 seats like they were last year? There's a lot of different routes they can go. So just on Penske, I think going into the year, if we saw one of them moving a seat, I think a lot of people thought it would be Will Power out of a seat than Simon Pagenaud, just given some recent form and recent success. But Power got the early extension even before the first race even started. Pagenaud kind of waited, and at the end of the day, he's going to end up moving course. And I think it's multiple, not just for the Team Penske stuff and IndyCar, but also looking elsewhere and maybe past his IndyCar days and into the IMSA program. So I think we can get on to what happens for Penske and stuff after in just a second. But for Meyer Shank, obviously huge get if they do end up getting Pagenaud here, a surprising one in IndyCar, even though it was maybe a little bit something that you could have seen coming, but definitely a surprising one here for, at least for myself, and very excited to see what Pagenaud can do at this kind of blossoming team here going into next season.
Yeah, I mean, Simon Pagenaud, I think with Team Penske, like I just think those two work really well together, and that's like the strongest force we can have in the sport. What they have right now, Scott Mclaughlin, an up and coming driver here, of course, has proven himself down in Australia on many occasions, but he's coped fairly well, I'd say, so far in his rookie season, and has done some admirable things so far. And I think there's definitely more to come and more to be had there. And you expect that from a guy like Scott Mclaughlin. Like you said, though, Will Power is definitely one. He's on the decline in his career here. He's on the downward trajectory, and it would have probably made a little bit more sense looking at the standings wise and everything like that if they were to have moved on from Will Power. But like you said, he had the extension at the beginning of the season. Pagenaud's had a decent season so far. It hasn't been spectacular. He's had some bad luck here and there. We look at, Nashville this past weekend. I mean, he got basically wiped out. So it's unfortunate for Pagenaud. It's been kind of up and down at times, but he's going to be an absolute force to be reckoned with over there for Meyer-Shank. And you're going to have two guys that can really build a program for the short term. This is not really a long-term solution with having these two guys. This is more of a win now. Try and make a statement, show that this is winning equipment, and then maybe try and get a young rookie in here that could really surprise people in maybe 2-3 years time, maybe even 1 year's time. Who knows how long these guys really want to stay around in the sport on a full-time basis, that is. So it's a great move for Meyer-Shank Racing, but for Team Penske, they're losing a big name here in Simon Pagenaud, obviously a former series champion here. An Indy 500, decorated Indy 500 winner. Obviously, he's done very well for himself. 2 runner-up finishes along with the victory. So it's been a great partnership so far, and it's going to be a sad end that it's going to be at the end of 2021 that this is the end for Pagenaud and Team Penske. But it does allow them to be a little bit more strategic and try and build for the future in a way. They can try and look at somebody else that's a bit younger or somebody else that's out there on the open market that could be a nice filler placement and then go and compete for a top 5 in the championship, because that's what that Penske equipment is capable of. So it's tough to say who they're going to put with that seat. I don't know if you have any inklings for who you would suggest to put in that seat, but I'd be curious to know what your thought process is for Team Penske here. But for Meyer-Shank Racing, I couldn't be more happy for them that they are taking that Indy 500 momentum that they had earlier this season and carrying it into getting a high profile name like Pagenaud.
Yeah, for on the Penske side of things, I think the most likely scenario is them kind of retracting back to 3 seats for next season. And then after that season, looking to grab a big name free agent for that 4th seat, just because the big names that you would maybe attach to a potential Penske seat are already signed into next year. And the two ones that I would look at are Alexander Rossi, who's still signed into next season with Andretti, and Rinus VeeKay, who is still currently on a multi-year contract with Ed Carpenter Racing. And you look at Rossi's history racing with some of the Penske guys in IMSA programs, racing with Penske with IMSA, stuff like that, as a potential tie-in and how things have gone the last couple of years. Would they look to maybe get out of the contract early if he is that disgruntled? We know Andretti is looking to shake up their driver lineup. We expected the 2 seats to remain in Herta and Rossi, but is there a scenario where Penske could try to get somebody out of that seat earlier, or Rossi can get out of that seat earlier? I think that would be a good fit if they were able to, but I still think that's a long shot. And for Rinus VeeKay, kind of doing the Joseph Newgarden thing where he goes to Ed Carpenter Racing and then winds up at Penske, I think that's the long-term play in terms of a younger guy coming up to Team Penske there. But still signed into next season for Ed Carpenter. Is there something with the Chevrolet camp, or is there anything that you can do there to move him over to that Penske seat? I think that's a bit unlikely. So for myself, I think if I were to put money on it, I'd put money on that seat going away for next season, or McLaughlin shifting to the 22 and them moving that number 3 car away for next season. And then in a year's time, either getting Alexander Rossi as a free agent or bringing Rinus VeeKay in up from Ed Carpenter Racing.
One caveat to that maybe is that, Penske kind of owns the series. Now, I don't know if it would be a good look for him that he's downsizing per se for next season. I know the circumstances aren't ideal.
It's not really downsizing though, because they had McLaughlin come in this year and added the extra entry. So and then there's also the factor of, so what I'll say is, if they do go down to 3 full-time entries for Penske, I think the kind of trickle-down effect that we could see is that 4th entry in what would have been Simon Pagenaud's seat into next year kind of turns more into a full-time ride for Paretta Autosport, and we see Simona Di Silvestro do a full season. So that's what I'll say there for that.
Okay. Yep. I think there's definitely a lot of avenues they can go here, but I do like what you said with playing the long-term game here. Maybe you take the loss on the short term of having one less car going for a championship next season and then try and get that. Yeah, I agree with that. I
Yeah.
can agree
And
with that philosophy. We've seen that across motorsports in NASCAR specifically, where they downsize, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I think in IndyCar's case, it doesn't really do any harm if you downsize. You can kind of focus on 3 cars more collectively then, and they're at a more higher level than some of the guys that we've seen in NASCAR go down to maybe a 2-car organization.
Yeah, and I wouldn't even say it's as much as focusing on 3 cars or anything like that, then trying to shoehorn maybe a driver that's available that maybe wouldn't be your first choice otherwise, just because you want that extra car and they're the ones available, stuff like that. So I'd say if there's a driver that does become available, that makes sense. I'd say that's the road to go down. Like a Jack Harvey, we know already is going to Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan. So stuff like that isn't an option. I'd say the one other name I'd throw into that ring is maybe Kyle Kirkwood from Indy Lights. He's currently an Andretti driver, but if things don't work out with Andretti going into one of those seats for next season, which I do think that they'll find room for him next year with either Hunter, Ray, Hinchcliffe, or both of those vacating their seats at the end of the season, I think he could potentially be an option as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's a lot of different avenues you can go down, like I said, but I don't think there's really a wrong answer for Penske here. Do you know how long Power's contract is quickly? Do you know how long that contract extension is?
I think it was a 1-year extension.
Okay.
I think. So, I mean, I'll double check that quickly, but in a year's time, we could be looking at both Rossi and VK going into those, if that's kind of the route that you're thinking here.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to judge here. Like if they were to maybe take the short-term loss here, I don't know if I can't really consider it a loss, but like just the downsize for 1 season, just call it that. Then you just look at it, Power's gone after next season, and then you try and get a double duo in here for the future with Rossi and VK. I think that would be a nice little combination if they could pull that off, if they have the budget to do that. I imagine so. And they have the pull for sure to try and get guys like that to come to Team Penske and establish organizations. So as we're recording this, Will Power just went off in practice as well. So, I mean, it doesn't really do him any...
Before St. Pete, he signed a 2-year extension, so his contract runs until 2023. Now, we did see with Elliott, Cushman, Evans and stuff stay at Penske after they were kind of done with him doing the full-time IndyCar thing. He was still under contract. We saw him shift over to their IMSA program. That's potentially an option if they did want to do stuff like that, but he is signed until 2023.
Okay. Then I'll rethink my philosophy then maybe a little bit.
But I do like that thinking. And there's no reason they can't go to 5 if they wanted to necessarily. So no, there's no rule
on that. Yeah. Hey, oh, what a time to be alive. Hey, there's no rule on expanding to a 5-car team. But unless you have anything else you want to add on this Pagenaud storyline here, we kind of got off track of Pagenaud, but it was good to look at Penske for long term. But anything else you want to add on this before we move on to the next?
Nothing too much. I'm just thinking more generally, like the rest of IndyCar silly season, and my brain just starting to. I know silly season is my favorite. I love it so much. And I'd be lying if I didn't say that I had a list right over there written out with all my predictions for next season. So
of course you do.
It's usually how it goes, but I will say there's a lot of really interesting stuff left for IndyCar silly season. There's a lot of expected moves that haven't been confirmed yet, whether we look at Jack Harvey, what's going to happen with that. I guess we can now say McLaren seat, even though it's Aero Schmidt Peter. Like,
yeah, good for that.
Because
was cool.
So basically the McLaren seat, we think there's going to be a third one if there is a big name free agent that they do decide to get. What's going to happen with Alex Albon? Does he get an F1 seat? If he doesn't, does he come to North America? Cool. Like there's a lot of really interesting stuff to come. And of course, I think the first big domino in terms of the announcements is going to be, when do we find out what Andretti's doing with their lineup? Do they go back to 5 seats? Because of course we expected Marco Andretti to be full-time this year. He wasn't. They did end up running the 98 full-time. Do they look to do the 98 full-time or a 5th entry full-time? And then if they don't, what happens to Hinchcliffe and Ryan Hunter-Ray, and what moves they decide to do there? So a lot of fun stuff still to come in IndyCar silly season.
I feel like they always take the longest, though, don't you? The IndyCar,
they're definitely last. And Alex Albon in an interview earlier today said that as well, where F1 kind of is earlier in their season versus IndyCar, who kind of does all their business after the season. And that kind of makes sense as well.
Because it
ends earlier. It's a shorter season in terms of being 17 or 18 races this season. Yeah. So there's no reason to rush it when you can do all your business at the end of September into October. So
makes sense. Yeah, it's a fun time though. I was going to ask you quickly: do you prefer the silly season for motorsports or free agency for hockey? Because you get into both heavily, obviously, but like you get energetic for both. But this is it's an interesting one.
So I like silly season for motorsports more, but I like the fact that free agency for hockey happens in the span of like 48 hours. So that's what I'll say. And, right. And it's not just hockey either. Like, this is more like dramatic. Football and like everything. I just eat it up. So yeah, I like player and driver movement. What can I say?
I think everybody does to an extent. Like I'm a big fan of it too, but I mean, you take it to another level, my friend. I have to say,
it's not healthy. Yeah, no.
But we'll move on to the next little bit of news here. Just wanted to touch on the Music City Grand Prix from this past weekend for IndyCar. That was obviously a huge event. We had obviously NASCAR at Watkins Glen, but then they had to swiftly move into the IndyCar race to try and get as much viewership as they could. That was a really smart marketing decision and broadcasting decision on their part. Bit messy at the beginning. Lots of cautions quickly on. A lot of guys being a little bit too over aggressive. I mean, heck, the race winner was basically flying through the air at one point. But
I mean, it wasn't basically. I think it was literally.
No, he literally was flying through the air. But obviously, Marcus Ericsson, if you hadn't seen it, won the inaugural Music City Grand Prix. A pretty fantastic race all around. It was great to see the atmosphere. I love the timing of it, kind of like the day into dusk, trying to transition there. Mm-hmm. Looked really cool under the skyline of Nashville. And it drew in 1.212 million viewers this past Sunday, which is believed to be the biggest viewership for an IndyCar race on cable since 1998, of course, apart from the Indianapolis 500. So that's just the regular season race beyond that. But this is just a good stepping point for IndyCar here, that a market that they're trying to tap into here in Nashville seemed to work at its inaugural debut here for having some great viewership numbers by that industry for that series is standard. Of course, NASCAR draws in about a million or so more viewers per race on that front, even more so than on their usual kind of off races where it's the predictable ones and the schedule ones that they've had for a while. Like the Indianapolis road course this weekend won't garner that much viewership in terms of that per se. We'll see with this doubleheader if it does spur it up a little bit, but really great viewership from this past weekend at Nashville. Just your initial thoughts here, Kyle. We can look at it just quickly of the Music City Grand Prix success. Should they try something a little bit different? Do they need to tweak anything, or were you satisfied as a racing fan from what you saw on Sunday?
Yeah. So just given ideas to the comparison to like NASCAR in terms of the viewership there on the Sunday, Watkins Glen, the Cup Series race drew 2.124 million viewers. And so, as you mentioned, there about a 1 million difference, but IndyCar will take a 1 million difference with NASCAR every single day for their non-Indianapolis 500 events. So great to see that interest there. I really think the amount of attention given to the race and the doubleheader kind of nature of it in the Cup Series race, I think was a big factor in some of the live look-ins and stuff they did over the weekend. So big fan of what NBC did there and trying to promote the IndyCar race and help their multiple different platforms that they have in both NASCAR and IndyCar in the second half of the year, specifically for NASCAR there. So great to see in that regard. In terms of the race, it was a bit lackluster in terms of the actual racing because we didn't get as much of it as we maybe hoped for. There was a lot of cautions. There was a lot of strategy in that regard. It was a lot of start and stop. It took a lot longer than expected. So in that regard, it was a bit disappointing, but it was a street circuit that kind of gave us what we also kind of expected in terms of the chaotic nature of the event, high speeds, really sharp and difficult racing. And so I appreciate what the circuit brought in terms of the difficulty that it was, just like Colton Herta and how great he was all weekend long, being clearly the fastest guy and then trying to go down and race for the win. And he ends up crashing, stuff like that.
Heartbreaker for him.
What I would say is that they need to do a little bit more to help out the racing product, just because it did become so much of parade at times and stuff like that. And it almost became too difficult at points with the amount of entries that they had and the pile up nature of certain crashes and stuff like that. So I think there's a lot of potential there, specifically in the Nashville market, but just with kind of how sluggish it was to kind of get going, especially with some of those early cautions. I do wonder what kind of viewership was like versus the beginning of the race as it kind of went along. I would have been interested to see some of those numbers and how many viewers kind of maintained through some of those longer caution periods. But I think everyone expected this to kind of be a chaotic kind of first race. But from here, they know what worked, what didn't, and what to fix going into the future. And I think there's a lot of potential here in the Nashville market. And and this race specifically is kind of a more marquee event.
I think it's important that they do make the appropriate adjustments while there's still interest high in a market like this. You don't want it to repeat itself and then people are deterred away for a next season if there is a third season kind of thing. If they replicate what happened this season, then people are like, oh, this is kind of like a bit of a messy kind of race. It's not as great as what we initially thought it was going to be. We gave it a second chance, yada, yada, yada. But if they actually do make the appropriate changes here and, it's an improvement, of course, that's the key word, improvement from the original race. Like you said, it was a bit stagnant at times, just difficult to pass because it is a very tight, tricky circuit and lots of adjustments.
And to that point, like when they were actually racing, it was very enjoyable. It was a really fun circuit to watch, especially with some of the onboards and stuff with how difficult the circuit was. Yeah. And then going over the bridge, the high speeds and stuff like that. It was a really fun race when they were actually racing. It was just a lot of the start stop and difficult in that nature, and watching Herta try to track down Ericsson for the win with the different setup of car. Herta, where it was more technical, easier to go through those slower speeds, versus Ericsson, who was more trimmed out and was able to burst away from him on the straights there.
The guy was literally flying out there.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, literally. So in that regard, yeah. But some stuff to tweak and fix going into next year, but I'm excited for the event still.
Absolutely. Good first attempt here. We'll see what happens for next season.
And clearly there was fan interest. So very exciting.
Yeah, it was good to see, like, even people who didn't buy tickets, there was like some little gates and stuff. You could see them like peering in through and just trying to get as much action as they could. And that's no small feat. To try and close down the entire downtown city of Nashville is pretty damn solid for IndyCar to secure that and get that all to work out. And it was a good first attempt. We'll see what happens next season when it does eventually return to the calendar in 2022. As well as, I just wanted to point out for the 2022 schedule, it seems like there's a possibility that Iowa Speedway makes its return to the calendar, as NASCAR and IndyCar are in advanced talks, according to Adam Stern, to restore Iowa Speedway to the 2022 schedule. And it seems that's pretty positive, and that would be awesome if they could do that for Iowa, because it's a great little racetrack for both IndyCar and NASCAR. It should be a mainstay on both calendars, in my opinion. I think everybody kind of agrees with that collectively, but what are your thoughts on this, Kyle? This is obviously a very positive one. I don't think you can really go wrong with this, but the possibility of seeing Iowa reappear back on the calendar, a place that it definitely deserves to be, because it's given us great action basically every time we've gone there. It's a nice difference than what IndyCar usually does, short track racing rather than their typical road courses or even higher speed ovals. This is definitely much different than what we're used to seeing for the IndyCar brand, but it's a welcome addition to the schedule when it has appeared in the past. But the fact that it could be reappearing is definitely an interesting prospect.
Yeah, going in, like last year, we wanted more of Iowa, not off of everything. And that's kind of what it ended up being. We were hoping Iowa would end up on like a Cup Series schedule. And then all of a sudden IndyCar's not going there. And then all of a sudden, all of NASCAR isn't going there either. So it's great to hear that there's talks to get back to that track. Because it is a really strong track. We don't have enough short tracks already, and to kind of have a decent one go by the wayside that's had some really strong racing, both in IndyCar and in kind of NASCAR's lower series, was really disappointing to see. I hope it ends up back on IndyCar's schedule. We know Roger Penske said that IndyCar needs more ovals. We need a more diverse schedule than what it was this year. Honestly, they could use more races in general because they've only got like 17 this year.
Up to 20.
Yeah, at least, especially with how much interest there is right now. A race at Iowa would be great. And then also for NASCAR, I'd love to see both the lower series go back there in addition to the Cup Series, honestly. Like we're talking about wanting more short tracks. And this is a track that has provided some really great moments at the lower series. And so to go away from it completely is asinine to me. At the very least, have it as kind of one of your standalone events for those lower series and diversify the schedule some more rather than having the same thing for every single series. So very excited by that proposition. And it looks like Hy-Vee is going to be the one kind of funding this as one of the title sponsors for it, which is absolutely great to see a company like that get involved in IndyCar, both in sponsoring a lot of what Santino Ferrucci has done in that 45 RLL entry this year, but then additionally here looking into next year, potentially being a title sponsor for a race back at Iowa, which is great to see.
Absolutely. I would be over the moon if we could get like just even a lower series of NASCAR and along with IndyCar back there for next season.
That's like not much else. That is literally just what it used to be.
Like I don't think it can be overstated enough. Like, I mean, it's a little bit off topic, but we saw the Field of Dreams game last night and how much of a market there is for sports in Iowa for it all being a cornfield, apparently, to a lot of people. There's a lot of interest for motorsports.
There isn't a whole hell of a lot there.
But there is sporting interest there. And I think it's good to tap into those markets where they're a little bit more obscure, a little bit more out of the way, per se. And it's good to connect to the grassroots level to an extent of some of these, these sports, whether that's baseball, motorsports. I mean, anything, no matter where you are in North America or anywhere in the world, it's good to connect to your grassroots. And that's why they do so well. Those type of events like Iowa would do fantastic if it came back on the calendar. I don't care about how much seating or not seating there is there. I mean, NASCAR barely fills out the grandstands nowadays, no matter how big they are, basically. So I think it would be a good idea if they would just fill out the grandstands. I don't care if it's 30,000, 20,000, whatever it is, fill out the grandstands and put on a show for the fans and put them where the drivers really essentially want to be as well. I don't think there's a driver really out there that doesn't like Iowa for what it brings to the calendar and to the actual series itself. It's very unique. It's bumpy. It's rough. It's got a lot of character to it. Got a lot of lines for slower speeds and even for the fast cars of IndyCar. There's just a lot of diversity that can go around at a track. You wouldn't think, looking at it from an aerial view, you wouldn't think, oh yeah, that track is good for both IndyCar and NASCAR, but it is. It's a really great venue and not many tracks are like that. It's very unique. So I think it would be a very smart decision to come back to Iowa, and they need to look elsewhere. They need to try and expand this kind of schedule and look into these markets that obviously want racing, but have been kind of denied it, not by their own doing, but from kind of the executives' fault. But good little note there to end the IndyCar side of things in terms of news. But we have to kind of preview a little bit this weekend here, Kyle. This is a fun one because it's the doubleheader weekend. It's the first time that we're going to see the Cup Series and IndyCar at the same venue here this season. Obviously, it's going to be a great experience for NBC as a broadcast network, as well as for the series. It's going to be funny to see maybe if Jimmy Johnson can try and connect with some of his old Cup Series pals. And speaking of Jimmy Johnson,
sure he will. Yeah,
I just wanted to touch on this quickly. It seems like he's more and more likely to be considering a Cup Series ride on maybe a part-time thing or one-off or something like that. It's starting to pick up steam a little bit. We never really thought Jimmy Johnson would or wouldn't confirm or deny coming back to the Cup Series. He's never said he's full out done with it. But the way he ended at Phoenix, finishing fifth, obviously last season, was a good way to kind of maybe conclude his career. But he has not left that door closed just yet. And it's an interesting one because Chip Ganassi is obviously pulling out of the Cup Series for next season. And that is his obviously owner for IndyCar right now. But I'd be curious to know what your thoughts are quickly on Jimmy Johnson before looking into this weekend ahead, because there's a lot of different things circulating about him right now and his possibility of returning to the Cup Series in some respect or at some capacity. So your thoughts on Jimmy Johnson, a guy that's had a rough start to his IndyCar career here so far in 2021.
I wouldn't necessarily say it's rough. I'd say it's more as expected. This is a guy that has had a 20 plus year career in stock cars, and previous to that was doing stadium super trucks and stuff like that. Like, this is not a guy that has an open wheel background, and he's going and getting his first experience of it in an Indy car, which is one of the most difficult open wheel cars to drive. So I think it's more going as expected. And we've seen some development from him in races as well and stuff like that. So I won't be too harsh on him there. But in terms of the return to NASCAR and stuff, I still think it's a little bit far-fetched. I think maybe a one-off event at like the Xfinity level or something like that is more likely. than any kind of Cup Series return, just given the fact that he did race his entire career with Hendrick Motorsports, and the current rules, the way that they are, Hendrick Motorsports doesn't have the capacity to have a one-off fifth entry or anything like that. So I think if he were to do something in the Cup Series again, the only way I could really see it as being a possibility is if Hendrick Motorsports needed a replacement driver or something like that. Other than that, I think what we could see potentially is like a Junior Motorsports one-off kind of with something like this weekend, as an example, where maybe the stars align to where both are at the same track. It's something where he feels good about it, and they go to like an Indianapolis road course here, and on the Saturday he does like the Xfinity race for Junior Motorsports or something like that. But other than that, I still think it's pretty far-fetched, just given how his career in the Cup Series went, the current restrictions on what teams can do in terms of part-time and stuff like that. So I just think it's a little unlikely as it currently stands.
I'm hopeful, but I'm a little bit pessimistic that that's going to be.
I just can't see him doing anything in the Cup Series that isn't for Hendrick Motorsports at this point.
That's true. I do think that if he wants to leave his Cup Series career as is, which I don't feel like he should feel the need to come back and whatsoever. I think he's left his legacy much more than what many people are ever going to leave in this series for the rest of its existence. He's done some incredible things behind the wheel of a stock car. I think the way it ended, the way his story kind of went, I don't think a Cup Series ride going for a one-off race would be the smartest thing for him. I know there may be some
why not? Like, there's no downside to it.
I just don't know. I just don't see the point. You know what I mean? Like, I think
fun, why not?
I just think the way it ended, I think it was just like a really perfect ending for it. Like, it was the passing of the torch to Chase Elliott, the final paint scheme, the 48. Like, it just wouldn't look the same. It was like when Jeff Gordon filled in for Dale Earnhardt Jr. there in the 80. Like, it just didn't look right. You know, Jeff Gordon had hung up the fire suit and the helmet in the Cup Series, and then he comes out back. That was obviously obscure circumstances.
And that's the only circumstance that I see it happening.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. I hopefully that doesn't happen to any of the Hendrick Motorsports drivers, obviously, where Jimmy Johnson needs to come in and replace them. But if it was going to happen, yes, I would agree that if it's going to come back, he has to drive for Hendrick Motorsports. Anything else would kind of be a disservice to what he's kind of built, really, in my opinion. Maybe that's a bit harsh. I just
don't want like a Martin Brodeur situation where he plays this historic career for the New Jersey Devils, and then there's just like these couple games with the Blues at the end. Like, no one wants that.
No, exactly. I agree with that. So just wanted to touch on Jimmy Johnson because the stories were circulating about him a little bit. Fair. But this weekend, we'll get back to this now. Practice is going on. It's just about to wrap up as we are recording this. Alex Palou leading the way with Rinus VeeKay in second. Christian Lundgaard in the 45 is in third. A very impressive first practice session for him currently. IndyCar race winner, we can kind of get into that as well in this, but your initial thoughts coming into this weekend, of course, they had already raced here for IndyCar earlier this season. Rinus VeeKay running second in practice right now, won his first IndyCar race the last time we were here. So, and Romain Grosjean finished second in that race, led the most laps as well. So lots of different prospects for this weekend in terms of who could potentially be a candidate for a race victory this weekend. It's a up in the air kind of race. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch as the season winds down. Points and finishes are absolutely crucial for these guys in the championship battle. Of course, Alex Palou has a decent lead right now over Scott Dixon, I'd say. I don't think he can feel too comfortable with a champion of Scott Dixon breathing down his neck, but Palou has done an excellent job, an unbelievable job really so far this season to be leading the championship after winning the first race back in Alabama earlier this season. So your thoughts coming into this weekend, Kyle, your expectations?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this one. We've got another, after setting the record or matching the record for many years in terms of car count for a non-Indy 500 race for IndyCar, we go and top it this weekend with the extra Top Gun entry in the 75 and RC Anderson, and going up to 28 entries this weekend. So super excited for that. Also very excited to see Christian Lundgaard's debut in IndyCar. As you can probably tell if you watched our F1 silly season preview way back at the beginning of the year, I like this kid quite a bit as a prospect in motorsports. I had him going up to Formula One for this season. Things haven't worked out well in Formula 2 this season, some bad luck and stuff like that. Not necessarily the form that he's maybe expected, but got a test at Barber with RLL. He's going to be in the 45 entry this weekend, and he's up there in the top 10 in terms of practice times already, which is great to see for somebody that's going from an F2 vehicle to IndyCar,
Yes.
which is completely different in terms of the power and the no power steering as well. So excited to see his debut, but in general, just a huge car count and 28 cars, a lot of really competitive people in the field. And like you mentioned that the last time we were here at the Indianapolis road course earlier this season, we had a great battle between Rinus VeeKay and Romain Grosjean, two people looking to get their first IndyCar victories at the time. It was VeeKay that came out on top, but can Grosjean find that form again this weekend? Can he be back there at the front? What happens in the championship with Alex Palou, Scott Dixon, Pato O'Ward? What happens? Can VeeKay go back to back on the road course? So there's a lot of really great stuff to watch this weekend. I'm really looking forward to it.
All right, let's get into the race winner picks for IndyCar this weekend. I'm usually going first for that on the NASCAR side of things, but Kyle's going to be going first for that in just a little bit for the NASCAR fantasy side of things. But for me this weekend, I'm going with Romain Grosjean. I think for that entry, finishing second earlier this time out at the Indy Road Course earlier this season, he led the most laps, for crying out loud. The guy was on fire. The strategy just didn't quite work out for him. In the end, Rinus VeeKay just had the better strategy. And at the end of the day, maybe had just that little bit more pace as the race wore on. So I'm going to go with Romain Grosjean to get his inaugural IndyCar victory this weekend at the Indianapolis Road Course. I think it'd be a great story to see.
I think we're going to have a great race this weekend. I'm really looking forward to it. Honestly, it might be the race that I'm most excited for this weekend. I know Cup Series debuting at Indy on the road course is going to be really fun, but man, just the championship battle, the amount of fun drivers we have in the field. I'm really looking forward to this IndyCar race this weekend, but my race winner pick is going to be Pato O'Ward.
Oh, really?
And he's had some mixed results on the road course so far in his IndyCar career. Best finish of 5th last year, but has had some bad results mixed in there with some bad luck. But the thing for me is each time we've gone to a place 2 times so far this season, the second time we've gone there, Pato O'Ward has won. When you look at Texas, he won the second race there. When we went to Detroit, he won the second race there. And those were both 4 races into the season. So 4th race of the season, Pato O'Ward won. Second race of that doubleheader at Texas. Then you go 4 races ahead. He wins that next one at Detroit, second half of the doubleheader.
You've
there.
done your math here.
It's not a doubleheader here. But it is the second time that we're going to the Indianapolis road course this season. And it is the next 4th race of the season as we hit the 12th race of the season. So I will take Pato O'Ward to continue the trend this season.
Well, that would be a big stake to his championship kind of battle here. That would be huge for him if he could pick up the victory here this weekend. Would go a long way in that championship bid. But I like the swing. There's lots of options here this week, and I don't think there's really a wrong answer. I think there's at least 10 cars at least that could be competitive for the race victory.
As it usually is for IndyCar. It's so good right now.
So much parity right now, and I think that's the great part about this series. And people need to start watching it more because it does provide some really great events and racing on a very consistent basis. So that's the IndyCar weekend preview there. We're doing that one first because NASCAR is usually our big finale. We have one little note to get to before we get into our fantasy preview, and we'll get into that right now. And for all you gamers out there, it is time. The NASCAR video game franchise is returning once again this season for NASCAR 21 Ignition to be released on October 28th. So a little bit further down the road, basically come season's end. And we're going to be getting only the 2020 version of the game. So it's an interesting kind of thing that they're going to be doing, but nonetheless, it'll be available on PS4, Xbox One, and PC. So not the next gen consoles that we currently have with the PS5.
I don't know about you, but I definitely don't have it.
No, I don't have the PS5 either. I'm going to have a hard time trying to find them for the
I'm
fall.
sure there's a lot of people having a hard time with that one. But
so maybe it's a smart decision. I don't know. But they released their trailer earlier this week. Questionable, in my opinion, in some respects on how the game looks with the physics. But I don't think I'll be purchasing the game, to be honest. But I just think the Eutechnics games that they had back in the 2015 kind of era, their 2014, I thought those were really good. I thought the handling was great. I thought I could really drive the car aggressively. I like those games probably above anything else that I drove for the NASCAR games. The NASCAR Heat games were a failure, in my opinion, in terms of how they kind of the cars handled and the game, the way it was, promoted and everything like that. It just wasn't a great game whatsoever for the 5 years. Basically, it kind of went on there. But I'm curious to see how this one goes, really. But I don't know what your thoughts are on the game, your overall opinion on your first impressions really from the trailer. But you're the more gamer, I guess, between the two of us on the motorsports stuff. You are an iRacing fanatic to an extent compared to myself.
I wouldn't go that far.
But you do like to dabble into the racing video game scene or the simulation stuff. So there's not much you can really gather from the trailer itself. But what are your thoughts on a new era here for the NASCAR video games?
Yeah, so I haven't owned a NASCAR game in a long time. I think the last one that I actually had was like NASCAR 2011 or whatever, one of the Activision ones. It's been a long time. I didn't get any of the I don't. Was it Inside Line? I can't remember what it was actually.
I think it was, if it was 2011, it was Inside Line.
Whatever the one that had like the really great trailer where like one of the Roush cars started flipping and stuff, whatever that one was. I'm pretty sure it's just called NASCAR the game 2011, but
the Biffle
anyways, yeah, I think that's what it was. Anyways,
yeah.
Like that's the last NASCAR game I had. So I don't have any experience with like any of the heat games or anything like that. But I do have some recent experience, as Lukas kind of mentioned, with some iRacing stuff for the past year. I've done a decent bit of Assetto Corsa, mixed in with F1 games over the past handful of years as well. So not like crazy in depth. I haven't done any like the R Factor stuff, which is what this engine is built off of as well. But I am more optimistic about this game than Lukas is, at least based off of what I think he thinks. But
no, you are 100%.
The graphics look very, very strong from what we've seen so far, and some of not necessarily the trailer, because the trailer is always kind of bumped up and whatever, but some of the screenshots that they've shared and stuff like that. I don't know about the physics or anything like that, because we just really didn't get to see too much in terms of actual gameplay. I'm optimistic because it is the people that made R Factor and motorsport games and stuff like that are making this game. So I am optimistic in terms of the gameplay and stuff. And the fact that they are focusing more on the gameplay and how the cars and stuff like that are versus some of the features and everything like that, that kind of all coming together for motorsport games makes me a little bit more optimistic for this one. I'm not going to buy it on release or anything like that. I'm going to wait a little bit, see how it goes. And if the game does look good, if it does have good physics, if it does have good handling, if the features are there, is something that I'll probably consider closer to those Black Friday sales or getting closer to some of those Boxing Day sales. But I am optimistic about the direction this game in this series is going with motorsport games. And this is the first iteration of it as well. Just remember how awful the heat games were at the beginning and how they ended up in a decent spot. This seems to be starting in a good spot. And so the potential to go from here is really, really high for a company, of course, in motorsport games that, as you can tell by the name, is pretty passionate about motorsports. And we know that they're going to be making an IndyCar game in the next couple of years as well. So excited by this release, and we finally have details and stuff. Still got to wait a little bit longer. Interesting release date coming at the end of a season versus the beginning of it, kind of more like the F1 kind of mold where it comes out in the middle of the season versus the kind of other sports where you look in North America at NHL, Madden, stuff like that coming out at the beginning of their seasons. But I'm excited to see what we get in NASCAR 21 Ignition here.
All righty. We are a bit more of an optimist on this front than I am, but I think it's just because of how poorly the NASCAR heat generation was. I'm a bit more reluctant to try and get into the NASCAR video game scene again and, put my money into a game that's just been... The
thing that makes me optimistic about it is the R Factor stuff. That's basically what I'm kind of determining it on. If it wasn't the people behind R Factor, I'd be much more pessimistic. But the fact that a legitimate sim is behind this and one of the better ones that has had stock cars in the past as well, I'm excited to see what they do with it.
Alrighty, that'll do it for the news and notes for today's episode. IndyCar and NASCAR, really quiet week for NASCAR news. So expect that to really ramp up here as the summer months kind of conclude and into the fall for next season, driver announcements and whatnot, as we are very close, it seems, to a Kurt Busch announcement on that front as well, with Ross Chastain moving over to Trackhouse. It's just a matter of time before he signs that 23-11 deal, it seems, for next season in that second car. So it's very close, apparently, according to Kurt in a recent interview there. I believe it was to the media with Bob Bob Pockris and his media availability and whatnot. So that should be coming out probably maybe in the next week, maybe 2 weeks or something like that before the playoffs start. I would imagine they would announce something like that, but we'll see on that front. But that'll do it for the news and notes. It is time for fantasy.
I'll just go on mute for the next 5 minutes.
You're going to have to lower my volume here for it.
I do it in post anyways.
Yes. That is the sound of the victory.
You got like a half second of it before the noise gate just canceled it off.
Whatever.
It's so good.
Okay, we'll try that. But I won a week in fantasy, ladies and gentlemen. Oh my gosh. 12 races in the making. Watkins Glen is finally where I broke through. Thank you, Kyle Larson, for performing. Oh my God. I finally saved the usage and it paid off exponentially. So it's been a long time coming. I don't know how to feel about it all, but it's very much swiftly coming back into realization that I have to try and back it up here this weekend at the Indianapolis road course, a track that we have no real notes to go off of course, when we record this. We aren't even taking advantage of the possibility of of having practice for the Cup Series this weekend because we wouldn't. Yeah, exactly. We wouldn't want to give our such a huge advantage or something like that, right? Like that would be really stupid of us. But no, we've been very consistent so far this season. Whenever there's practice, we have recorded prior to it. So
well, not by choice necessarily.
No, not really. But we'll continue this on for the remainder of the season. I believe this is the penultimate practice session of the year in qualifying. Is that correct? Or
yeah, because this is the this is the last new one we have, and then the next one we have is for the finale. So
wow, this is it's an emotional time. It's going to be a long time before we see practice and qualifying for the race weekend. Can't believe they're not doing it for the playoffs, but whatever. It is what it is on that front. But we do have the Indianapolis road course for the first time, as I've said. And as all you know, it's going to be a fun one.
I had to go and measure the practice stuff, and now I'm all mad again.
I'm sorry. I'm just as mad as you, man.
But I forgot about it.
I'm sorry. I just realized it in the moment of talking too. I didn't even have it written down. But yes, I go into this as the defending week winner. So we'll try and get our marks back on.
I'll give a quick update. So Lukas got the win, 224 to 204. The Kyle Larson play worked out very, very well. Even though I did get the Kyle Larson win and the extra 15-point bonus, just wasn't good enough for the other picks to make up that deficit for the race winner. The overall now 16-7 myself.
That's
in terms of the head-to-head weeks.
Number.
It's not great. I'm going to be honest. It's not great for you.
That's so bad. Let's not forget, I whooped you last year, like heavily, like 10-3.
I was sandbagging. Don't worry. But the big thing is that the overall points is only a 125 point gap still. I'm up 42.62 to 41.37. So even though I have gone on a really big streak here in terms of winning the weeks, it's been very, very slim point differentials because we have had fairly similar lineups over that time. Yeah. And when I lose in big fashion. And when you win, it's usually pretty handily. And so what were you going to say there?
Yeah. What's your total number for your fantasy right now? I'm just curious. Like what's your actual?
Like 4,262. Okay.
So we don't talk about this at all, but I run about like 4 different fantasy leagues or just like for fun for NASCAR. And I do have the Green Flag podcast one. And would you like to know what that number is at?
Like 5,000 probably.
No, it's only 5 points more than you.
and that's with me not getting like any of like the winner picks that I would have wanted.
No, absolutely not. But I just thought it was funny. I was just curious what it was compared to yours and what this other one is for the actual official Green Flag podcast one on the NASCAR Fantasy app.
On the overall top 25,000 now. Finally, it's not been the like greatest of years for either of us, but we're doing solid. And
compared to last year, this has been shocking for me. This has been shocking for me. I was in the top 1,000 for a large majority of last season. So,
but everything will change and reset once we get to the playoffs, and who knows from there. But
exactly,
if I win 2 more weeks, though, I do clinch at least a tie in the overall weekly head-to-head. So
you're gonna get that. I mean, I basically have conceded the regular season.
It's more the overall that I'm looking at.
I need to try and beat you heavily in some weeks, and hopefully that.
Hey, these last 3 are going to be kind of the one where you can look at, or these next 2 specifically, because you do have more usages and more versatility to go with. So
hopefully that's the case.
Let's stop delaying here. Let's get into the meat and potatoes for everybody.
Well, you start us off, Mr. Cushman, with the first pick. Lead us off. Let's go.
Chase Elliott. There's not much to say here. In terms of usages, I've got 2 left on him. Yeah, I've got 2 left on Chase here, and it's just, the strategy all season long has been save the usages for the road courses. And this is the last one we have of the regular season here. So feel very, very good about him. Even though last week he had some struggles, he still had an insane car at the end, got all the way back up to second. If he avoids those issues, they have the practice time, they have qualifying as well. If they don't decide to give an illegal car and start at the back. And even if they do, we saw at Road America in the new race where they got up there to the front. Feel very confident about that number 9 Chevrolet. So Chase Elliott is the lead-off guy, as per usual on the road courses for myself.
Yeah, as you said, we've been saving these usages basically the entire season for this just 2-week stretch here. We've had to give ourselves a little bit of insurance and something left in the bank. And
took a lot of restraint, but we got here.
Absolutely. But this hasn't been the Chase Elliott season I think we were expecting by any means either.
It hasn't him to win the dominant one, but he's, I mean, if you told me going into the last road course of the season that Chase Elliott wouldn't have the most points this season on road courses, I'd be very surprised. And he's number 2 behind Kyle Larson there in terms of garnering the most points on road courses this season. And most of that comes because he hasn't got those early stage points in some of these races. You look at Watkins Glen and Road America versus Kyle Larson, who got up to 56 points at Watkins Glen, who got the perfect 60 at Sonoma. That's the big difference there. But still very surprising.
Yeah, and if you had told me that Chase Elliott's only 2 wins this season would be coming on road courses, I think I'd be surprised too, considering how much he kind of showed at the end of last season.
Lucked into with some rain.
Absolutely, and Larson probably would have caught him if it stayed green there at Coda.
He would have had a pit.
Yeah, it would have been unfortunate there for Elliott that he wouldn't have got that win, but luckily the rain saved him there. Should have won the Daytona road course if it wasn't for a whole bunch of shenanigans there, I guess. But apart from that, it's been, I don't know if I can call it a disappointing season for Chase Elliott. I think that would be the wrong word to use, but maybe underwhelming. From what we saw last season, of course, the defending champion, but you never know. They could be saving some stuff for the playoffs and they could turn it on just like that. It's not like they've been terrible by any means. I mean, they're still in very good shape playoff point wise, and
they're just outside the top 5 in terms of points in the regular season.
They've had some penalties
too. Penalties are the reason why they're not in that top 5. But they haven't been that upper echelon contending for the wins as we would have expected, except for the road courses. And that's where we're going this weekend. It's not the Brickyard. Well, I mean, technically it is the Brickyard, but we're going the opposite direction on it this weekend. So Chase Elliott is the leadoff guy for myself, and I assume for you as well.
Yes, he is. Chase Elliott, I've got 2 usages left on the 9 car. I'm feeling very good about that. Obviously, we'll use him here and most likely next week. And I don't think we'll be saving him for Daytona unless Kyle's got something really tricky up his sleeve. But
I mean, he has been good at Daytona, but
let's be honest. I kind of wish I was coming into this weekend with maybe 1 usage left on Chase Elliott. I'm not 100% sure how I feel about Michigan next weekend. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like there's more options.
That's fair.
But obviously going to be using him this weekend, and hopefully he can get the job done and have some very, very good points. And with qualifying, you expect him to be up in that top 10 for sure, based off of their pace that they've had so far this season. He's not the greatest one-shot qualifier on 1 lap time, but he's a very consistent guy. And as long as he doesn't start at the back due to tech issues, he should be fine and up in the mix of things at the end of this race. But my second pick, it's a guy that you do not have any usages left.
Really?
Absolutely. I've got 2 usages left on Kyle Busch, so I have to use him here this weekend. If I had the 1, maybe I'd absolutely be considering and using that at Michigan next weekend. But with the 2, I have to use him because of the Loudon misfortune there at New Hampshire. So
you really saved on him. Wow.
Kyle Busch in my lineup this weekend has been superb on the road courses so far this season, apart from the Daytona road course. And I know people are trying to draw some comparables because it's usually an oval to and a road course. It's nothing like the Daytona road course here. This is a proper road course to an extent. And I'm curious to see what the difficulty level is for the Cup Series guys this weekend, because it's not overly it doesn't have too many corners that are too difficult. It's more high speed, approach it with lots of intensity, hard braking zones in some cases. Of course, turn one is going to be the hardest braking zone of them all, but there's a couple of interesting corners, but nothing too difficult where I'd see like the 18 car is going to be absolutely terrible this weekend. I feel really confident in his road course ability, and based off my usage situation, I'm not leaving a Kyle Busch usage on the table. And we know his super speedway luck has been abysmal since 2008 because he hasn't won on a super speedway since 2008. So I think this is a great play for me this week, and I feel confident about him. Indianapolis, if it was the oval, I'd still feel very confident in him coming into this weekend. But on the road course, maybe a little less so. I don't know if he'll be a race winner candidate, because I was really confident at Watkins Glen. Didn't quite have their best stuff, it seemed, at Watkins Glen. Was a top 5 car, which is still great, but well off the pace of what the 2 Hendrick cars could do in Larson and Elliott. So it's tough to say where the 18 car will fit in this week. And I think what they did at Watkins Glen and basically every other road course so far this season is within range and manageable for the 18 car. So I'm going to go with Kyle Busch as my second entry into my lineup.
Yeah, he's been very consistent this year in terms of, and again, excluding the first one at the Daytona road course. But since then,
he did get up into the top 5 in that race too after the early issue. Yep. So he's been very good.
Very consistent, not necessarily right there at the top as being like the guy in any of those races, but very solid top 5 contender in each of those races. And I really don't see why that would change this weekend. I don't have any usages left on him. I used them up a few weeks back, Pocono, and then last weekend were the last couple of ones that I used there. Yeah, worked out pretty well for me because I won 12 straight races, but I am going to kind of suffer from that here at the end because you decided to save on him a little bit more. And so you have that versatility here at the end, whereas I
didn't want to play him this weekend, really, but I have no other choice. So
I mean, fair enough. To myself, though, which means that I've got 2 picks here that are unlike yours, which is a little bit different. Usually we started off about the same through like the first 3 to 4, but yeah, with me out of some usages now, we
don't have that issue this weekend, Kyle. We're not going to have 6 and 6.
We're not going to have the same one. So there we go. I feel decent about that. My number 2 pick, again, going kind of chalk with the road courses and stuff. I got 2 usages left on him here, so I'm using one here, kind of similar to what you had with Kyle Busch and Martin Truex Jr. Showed very, very well at Watkins Glen last time out, which you would expect from Martin Truex Jr. We were a little more apprehensive just given some of the road course form that they've had this season. But if you look at it, the last 3 road courses, all of them inside the top 10. Sonoma, a standout event. Watkins Glen, a standout event. Road America was a fringe top 10. They kind of struggled for most of the day. So I do have a little bit of concern for Truex going into another new road course, but has that practice time, has the qualifying to kind of get more to grips. And so I'm interested to see what that means for Truex this upcoming weekend. But again, with those 2 usages left, I'm not going to be using him at a Daytona or anything like that. So I feel good about him this weekend, at least in the lineup as a road course guy, to get you a solid 30 or so points at the very least, if not contending up there for the top 5. And my second pick here for this round is, again, going chalk with the rest of those road course picks so far this season. And Joey Logano was a little bit down at the Watkins Glen, but you got to remember he got torpedoed by Brad Keselowski. And before that, he looked like somebody that could contend for a top 5 or for the win potentially in that race. So Joey Logano, very consistent early on this season, started off the season with 3 straight top 10 performances, very, very strong at the Daytona road course, almost won it at Circuit of the Americas and Sonoma. Road America was a bit of a miss for that team. Watkins Glen was looking good early on, but then they had some of the struggles with the Keselowski incident, but I still feel good about them going into this weekend. The big thing, though, is that I do only have the 1 usage left for Logano here. Looking to Michigan, though, with the 550 package and everything like that, the season for Logano,
good about that.
They've just not been good on the 550 package. So I'm not too heartbroken about that or anything like that. I'm actually more maybe looking at Daytona as being a race to potentially use Joey Logano, but with the uncertainty that is Daytona, I do feel pretty safe about using him at the Indianapolis road course. And there's always the potential of grudging a guy, especially when you've got one usage left on him. But just the overall form that Logano's been on road courses, especially this season, I feel pretty safe about playing him, even though I do have that one usage left here, just given Michigan and the 550 package and how bad that 22 car has been with that package this season.
Yep, those are some good picks there, Kyle. Interesting. You kind of throw me for a loop already, and it's a bit early for that. Yeah, because I kind of wanted to go a little bit differently this weekend, but I don't know if I want to match you or not, because I have the situation where I can match you on both of these.
Well, how many usages do you have on Logano?
2.
So, okay.
Like
I find that surprising that throws you for a loop then.
But I know. I'm not going to be using them next week at Michigan. So this is the problem.
That's my thinking. Like Michigan, like normal years, yeah, I'd absolutely be tossing it up. But for myself, Daytona is too much of a wild card, even though Logano is usually at the front getting those kind of guaranteed stage points. But I feel safer about them getting a solid day at Indianapolis than a solid finish at Daytona. So that's the differential for me, because Michigan has been such a non-factor for this team with this package this year.
Yeah, I will match you Martin Truex Jr. for sure, though.
Yeah,
I do have one usage left on the 19 car.
Okay.
Yeah.
That one's more interesting to me then.
No, but I do feel like they've been such a hit or miss team on 550 horsepower package tracks this season. Despite his recent kind of good numbers at Michigan, I think there's better options elsewhere that I have with one usages left on some other guys that I'm looking at that are more appealing to me than what Martin Truex Jr. could probably bring to me next weekend at Michigan. I feel like this is more of a predictable race to an extent, even though he hasn't been as great as what we maybe thought he was going to be this season on road courses, but he's still been very much a contender, getting good, solid stage points. Won a stage, obviously, last week, had some pretty good strategy. It's encouraging to see that they can, at least get that done at a track he's done very well at in his career. So I will be matching you on Martin Truex Jr. I'm going to wait a little bit on Joey Logano. Okay. Maybe I'll wait till the next round, see what I can feel about him. But the next one, I'm going to be 100% going with Christopher Bell. This guy's been on quite the roll recently, and the speed that he showed at Watkins Glen, up in that top 3 mix there, battling with his teammate and Larson before getting into it with Kyle Larson, getting dumped essentially by Kyle Larson to an extent into turn 1. The two of them haven't really talked since, but I mean, that'll blow over, I'm sure. I think Christopher Bell is on the upward trajectory here this weekend. Obviously, he's done very, very well, finished in the top 7 again last week. It was all Penske all Hendrick and Joe Gibbs cars on the top 7 last weekend. So those two teams are absolutely the king of the road courses this season, and basically has been for quite some time. So I wouldn't expect really anything less when it comes down to it. Maybe this weekend, Watkins Glen, obviously a little bit more predictable. There's more notes to go off of, but this weekend there could be the potential for somebody to spice it up in that top 5 mix. But until that happens, I think Christopher Bell is going to have a very good weekend here, and I feel confident with my usage situation. Obviously, I have 5 usages left. That's not an issue coming down to the stretch things, but Bell's been very impressive for me over the past month or so. Started to pick his momentum up and started to find his groove, and obviously won the Daytona road course earlier this season. So has that win in the bank. And I don't know how many stage points they'll go for necessarily, but I'm hopeful that Bell can get the finish at the end of the day.
Yep, I'm going to go with Christopher Bell as well here. JGR had very, very strong road course package last weekend. That's back-to-back really strong road course results for Christopher Bell, even with him getting dumped at Watkins Glen, of course, finishing second at Road America. So feel pretty good about that trend, the trend that team has been on recently, and kind of ramping back up going towards the playoffs. And Christopher Bell, especially this year, has really kind of proven that road course ability. Last year wasn't necessarily on display with the 95. We saw it at the Xfinity Series level, but he's really come back with a vengeance on the road courses this year. I like the JGR power going to this weekend. Practice, qualifying, feel good about all that stuff this weekend for Christopher Bell. So I've got him in the lineup there, as well as kind of a guy that I don't need to worry about in terms of usages or anything like that, but still provides a lot of value. My second one here, going a little bit differently, a little bit off the map. Got 9 usages left on this guy, so I have used him once this year, but I feel good about him this weekend, and that's Chase Briscoe. He won last time out here on the road course in the Xfinity Series. But for Chase Briscoe has quietly put together a really solid road course campaign this season. Top 10 at Circuit of the Americas, top 10 at Road America, and top 10 last time out at Watkins Glen. The practice and qualifying should result in a better starting position than what he's had at like a Watkins Glen or a Sonoma or something where he hasn't had that time just because of where they are in terms of points and stuff like that. But the result at Road America gave me a lot of promise. It's the home race for him. A lot of pressure in terms of needing those good results if they're going to do anything here at the end of the season. But the form that they've been on road courses leads me to believe that they're going to be in a good position for this one. So I'm going to take the swing on Chase Briscoe here in my lineup as the defending, technically, I guess, a road course winner at Indy here in NASCAR.
Wow. I didn't think you were going to go for that this weekend. I gotta say, and
I will say that's been the plan all along. So.
Okay. I do like it. I like
the hometown boy factor. I got the Gordon shirt on. We're going to the Brickyard. Like it's a big factor here.
I do like it. Mr. Cushman. All right.
There's final two picks here.
I know. I am interested to see where you go with your last pick here. If you're saving up for something for this big finale, like you like to do. But,
I don't got many usages left, man.
I know, but with that one usage, I'm looking at like a William Byron or something like that. I feel like that's something you definitely do. But for me, I'm going a little bit similar to what you did with your Chase Briscoe swing. I'm going with another guy that hasn't won a race in the Cup Series, has done very well on the road courses this season. Can you guess who it is?
Is it a full-time guy?
Yep.
Okay. Is it Reddick?
Yes, sir. Tyler Reddick.
Okay. That one scares me.
In my lineup this weekend, he's going stage point hunting.
Yeah.
This is where he needs to make up the points on Austin Dillon when he gets the chance, because he knows that this is an advantage for him when it comes down to driving. This is a huge weekend for Tyler Reddick. This is a make or break weekend for me for his champion or his playoff bid. This is a clear advantage for Reddick compared to Dillon. Michigan, probably pretty even when it comes to RCR equipment on a track like Michigan. I'd probably even give the edge to somebody like Reddick as well on that track. But then when you look at super speedways, automatic advantage to Austin Dillon. Reddick causes the wrecks at the super speedway tracks. So
that's harsh.
No, he does. He took out Kyle Busch last season, so I don't care. For Tyler Reddick, he's my fifth entry this weekend. I feel really good about him. Has done exponentially better as the season has gone on here with the road courses and the stage points kind of strategy as well. This is a bit of an obscure kind of race as well. A little bit of unknowns coming into this weekend. I think a guy like Reddick can pounce on that strategy. So I feel really confident in him in this race this weekend at Indianapolis, which leads me to my final pick. This is an interesting one, because I initially had AJ Allmendinger written down for this.
Yep.
But I could match you on Joey Logano, and I still think I feel pretty confident coming into this weekend. I have the usages. The thing with Allmendinger and a guy like Cendrick as well, since they're both running this weekend, is that they haven't been able to really put the finishes together as much as you'd like them to. They're pretty good on single lap speed. And obviously,
Allmendinger had good finishes at COTA and the Daytona road course. Cendrick has kind of been the more disappointing finishes, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah. I don't think Allmendinger is going to be going for stage points. A guy like Logano usually does. So I will go with Joey Logano for my last pick. I was thinking coming into this weekend, I would feel more inclined to use somebody like Cendrick or Allmendinger. But when I look at the point situation and look at my usage situation, I feel very comfortable with what I have coming into this weekend, where I don't feel like I need to save a usage. Those are usually usage savers, those two guys, when you look at the road courses, because you know that they're probably going to perform. But when I look at this weekend, I feel like there's some other candidates that could fill that gap that maybe Allmendinger and Cendrick could usually supply earlier this season. So I feel good about Joey Logano, not as confident as Watkins Glen, but still solid enough where I feel like, yes, the road course success has been good enough where he's going to be as valuable usage to me. And he's a guy, like we saw last week, is going to stay out there for the stage points no matter what the circumstance is, and try and get that finish at the end of the day, whatever they can manage. And that's usually a top 7-8 finish at the end of the day, given their speed that he usually has and his ability on the road courses. So he's my final entry into my lineup for Indianapolis.
I would have really liked it if he didn't do that and left me Logano as a guy for myself, but it's a good play on your part. I am really scared about the Reddick one. I went Briscoe just because I feel like he's got more top 5 potential. But man, Reddick's going to be there for those stage points. And if a lot of people pit, he's going to be able to gobble those up like he did at Road America, where he ended up being the most valuable guy that weekend with 46 points. So that one does scare me quite a bit. But with this final entry here, I do got to go with a bit of a swing here. And some of the form that I saw last weekend is something that makes me a little more optimistic than I have been at points this season. I thought I'd be using him a hell of a lot more on road courses so far this season. And I kind of have to a little bit of regret, but I am going with William Byron here as my final entry. I'm rocking the 24. We're at the Brickyard.
I knew it.
I knew
he'd go with Byron.
It was good.
Oh my God.
Good at Watkins Glen. Road America had some issues there. But man, he's just got to get those results at some point. I really like starting at the front, which he certainly will be with qualifying. We saw him win the pole at Road America. And I do have the 1 usage left on him. But when I look at Michigan, I've got a lot of guys that I feel good about potentially using. Mm-hmm. And so I don't mind tossing in both Logano and Byron as 1 usage guys, basically seeing if Briscoe can get some stage points, be good. Because if he does, then I can maybe save another big hitter going into next weekend. But for myself, I feel solid about my lineup. I do like yours a little bit more with some of the reds that you've decided to go, having Kyle Busch at your disposal, putting in Tyler Reddick there. I really like that swing. I'm going for more of that finishing position, hoping for some good runs for some guys, and we'll see how it plays out. But definitely going to be an interesting head-to-head, a bit more differences than I anticipated going into this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, if you had Kyle Busch this weekend, you probably would have played him. So
depending on how many usages I have.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like if you had an extra usage,
if I had 1 usage left,
maybe
I think I would have saved
it
for Michigan.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you have 2, obviously, having the 1 usage for these 3 weeks, I felt best about using it at Watkins Glen. I'd probably rank it Watkins Glen, Michigan, and then here at Indy. Yeah. But yeah, these are a couple of interesting ones. We got William Byron versus Kyle Busch, and then Briscoe versus Reddick, which is kind of funny how that plays out. But yeah, gonna be a fun one to watch and see. And as per usual, probably gonna be decided by the bonus picks.
Absolutely. But before we get into the bonus picks, Mr. Cushman, we have to get to the honorable mentions and the stay away froms. There's quite a few on this list I feel like could be interesting candidates this weekend. Obviously, the 2 guys that I spoke about earlier there, Austin Cendrick and AJ Allmendinger, they could definitely be filler plate pieces for your lineup this weekend. We both decided. I'm surprised that you didn't have one of them in there, but I just kind of went down the road that I think there's more value elsewhere this weekend rather than these 2. And I think it goes a little bit to on top of the point that these guys didn't win the Xfinity Series race last season. If they had, then I feel like maybe I'd be a bit more inclined. They were obviously both in the contention in the final 2 laps of that race, but they did not seal the deal like Chase Briscoe did. So that's a little bit of a pause point for me this weekend for those 2, but they're still probably going to be extremely valuable and good usage situations depending on what you have in your lineup. We both don't have Kyle Larson in our lineups for obvious reasons. We like him for Michigan next weekend for possibly a very, very good 50+ point day, given his success on the 550 package and his success at Michigan in his career. So I think it's pretty self-explanatory. If you have 2, go for it. I don't know what you have 2 usages for. I don't think I would have saved it for the Indianapolis road course, but definitely one for Michigan. I feel comfortable. I think we both feel comfortable, obviously, with that going into next weekend. His teammate, William Byron, of course, in your lineup this weekend, Kyle. Feel really good about him. Just needed that one weekend where I saw him on a road course that he looked good, and Watkins Glen was that. So I do like him just a tad bit more at Michigan next weekend. That's why I kind of have the 1 usage left for him. But he's definitely a good play this weekend.
I will say that I do like him more at Michigan in terms of playing the odds. I think it's more likely he has a bigger day. Yep. But with the people that I have at my disposal potentially for Michigan, I felt better about using him as a road course guy here and then having the people I have at my disposal for next week.
No, I like your strategy though. I think it's a good play on your part. Also, Alex Bowman, a guy that's been, he had a rough weekend at Watkins Glen. You had him in your lineup there.
Of course he did. Yep.
Didn't quite perform. So at least there's that you had the tough weekend with Bowman at Watkins Glen. I had it at Road America. A little bit different circumstances, but
slightly. Yours much more heartbreaking than mine.
Absolutely. But Alex Bowman has been a solid top 10 candidate on most of the road courses this season. Has had some bad luck. And Watkins Glen, they just didn't quite have the pace. And that was unfortunate for them compared to what their Hendrick teammates had that were all in the top 6 there. So we'll see what happens with Bowman this weekend. I just wanted to toss him in here. I don't think he's going to be at the top of anybody's list when it comes to possible candidates for their lineup for this weekend, but don't be surprised if he gets a top 10 basically at the end of this one. Going over to the JGR camp for this one, I've got 3 guys in my lineup from the JGR camp. The one guy I don't, Denny Hamlin. 1 usage left on the 11 car. I've kind of been sitting on that for a little bit now. He's been pretty solid on the road course this season. Very quiet.
Yeah, he's a consistent point scorer.
But I like him at Michigan or Daytona. Maybe. We'll see.
So just for some context there, Denny Hamlin is the 4th ranked driver in terms of points scored on road courses so far this season. And you might not think about that, but consistently in the top 5, like he grabbed another top 5 at Watkins Glen. This is a guy that's always
talk about
there
him all day, but yes,
in the conversation. He's always there at the end. He gets the points, he gets the finish. And that's why he's still tied for the regular season points lead, even without winning a race this season. And part of that is because of the fine form that he's been on the road courses. And the number 4 guy behind Joey Logano, Chase Elliott, and Kyle Larson, I don't think a lot of people would have expected that or would have anticipated that's how the numbers kind of break down.
That's definitely not his well-known expertise per a road course
underrated
racing.
Road course guy. Yeah. Not like
he's not a race winner,
gonna race win all the time stuff, but he's in that next group.
Yeah, exactly. He's in a very select few of drivers that are right there behind the top 4 guys. I'd say. I think that's where you could compartmentalize it. Truex, Elliott, Larson, and Busch. And then you have Hamlin probably right underneath that there with Logano. I think those 2 are very, very much equal when it comes to road courses. But Hamlin, I just like some other options compared to him, considering my 1 usage situation. I believe you have 1 usage left on Hamlin as well. Yeah. So we're going into it. We'll see what happens with Hamlin next weekend or maybe the week after.
I am fascinated for next week because I really do think that we could have the exact same lineup.
Well, I don't think we will because you have 1 more usage on Truex. So I think that we will have a different lineup.
And then you've got the extra or Kyle one. But
yeah, so we won't have the exact same, but it'll be.
But I feel like it might be one of those 5 out of 6.
Very similar strategies, and it'll come down to probably a 5-point weekend. Looking at Kurt Busch here, has been quiet, steady as the Kurt Busch usually is on road courses.
As you mentioned it, he's the number 5 guy in terms of points scored on road courses. So there you go.
He'd be an excellent addition to your lineup this weekend. I just like the momentum that some of these other guys are going for and the strategy some of these other guys are going for. If it wasn't for Reddick's point situation, I'd be looking at somebody like Kurt Busch for that kind of option. But with that being a bubble battle, you got to go for Reddick with the points with Kurt Busch being locked in. The final 3 here. Chase Briscoe, he did make the honorable mentions. I really do like the 14 car swing this weekend. Watkins Glen was very impressive for me. He wasn't spectacular in his Xfinity Series career there at Watkins Glen, but he was very steady. This is a track that he obviously won at last season. So I think that there is a lot to go for him at Indianapolis this weekend. If there could be a shock winner candidate, I'm going with Chase Briscoe this weekend. That's who I'd go with as a shock winner. If they ever came down to it, a late race restart or something like that to try and earn that playoff berth.
If we're going late race restart, I'm going Ross Chastain.
If he's in the position, yeah, maybe. I guess that'd probably be a good swing. And you mentioned Ross Chastain. He is in the honorable mentions as well. You put him in your lineup last weekend. How are you feeling about that decision? Because we haven't really talked about that, but he was steady for you, got some really good stage points there in that second stage.
He didn't get the high end of stage points that I was hoping for. I ended up grudging him, which ended up being the wrong move for Alex Bowman, but didn't really make much of a difference at the end of the day in terms of the head-to-head. But no, he had a nice solid day again. I thought that they would maybe gamble a little bit more in terms of trying to get off the rest of the strategies everybody else, but at the same time there wasn't really an opportunity to do so to a big extent. So for Chastain there, a solid day, but not necessarily to the extent that maybe some people were hoping for. Like he wasn't great in the first stage or anything like that, and I think that's what ended up costing myself using him in the lineup. Like if he had a better first stage and was up there, it was more of like a track position for him at the end of the day, because he did fall back a little bit after being up there in like the top 6, top 7 conversation.
Yeah.
But I do feel pretty decent about them again this weekend. We saw at Road America them have a really, really strong day with the practice and qualifying. I feel like that does help Chastain. And so I do think he could have a really strong day here again. But I think a lot of those points will come down to when the cautions fall, if they do, and what happens with the pit cycle, because those guys like Chastain, maybe not necessarily Chastain as much at this point, but Reddick absolutely will be going for those stage points. If they don't have the opportunity to do so, I think they might be a little bit lackluster, but we'll see how things play out.
Yep, definitely. I said I had 3 left. I kind of made a mistake. It's Austin Cendrick. I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but he's going to be an interesting one.
I was going to say, if you had 3 more, we're just covering like 90% of the field in honorable mentions.
That's usually how it goes here. I mean, I feel like I have a decent amount of honorable mentions that just missed the lineups, or if you're in a different usage situation that could be of value to you. But let's get to the stay away froms for this weekend. And it comes from 2 from the team Penske stable. Ryan Blaney and Brad Keselowski make an appearance on this list. I had Keselowski in my lineup last weekend. Oh my God, what a bad race for Keselowski. Every time I looked up at the TV, he was basically spinning out, wiping out his teammate.
His brakes, man. Like, oh my God.
I have no idea. Pole sitter. That's why I don't like the pole sitter. How many times have I told you I don't like the pole sitter? Hence why Kyle Busch at Loudon, Brad Keselowski at Watkins Glen. It does not work out for the pole sitter. So whoever
only problem for you now, though, is we don't know who's sitting on the pole.
That's the problem. So please don't let it be Kyle Busch or Tyler Reddick. So
I wouldn't mind a Kyle Busch pole.
Yeah, shut up. So for Brad Keselowski and Ryan Blaney, I'm grouping him in here. I did have them both technically as honorable mentions last week, and I had Keselowski in my lineup, so they kind of count as both. But I don't know. These guys just have not quite got the road course prowess that some of these other guys have coming into this weekend. And I don't know if you want to interject here, if you disagree with this take, but like, I just think they're not good options really this weekend, I think, at the Indy road course when you look at some other people that are available to us at least. So Blaney would obviously be the closer one to being an honorable mention, but even then he's down on the list for me now. Even though that Roval win was a couple of seasons ago, that was a couple of seasons ago. So it hasn't been quite all, flowers and roses and whatnot, or whatever that saying is, for Ryan Blaney on the road courses of late. Had a decent result at Watkins Glen, but I'm going to hold my stance on that and say that Ryan Blaney is probably not the best candidate here with Brad Keselowski.
No, I completely agree. I think I had that reaction just because of the word prowess. I don't think it's their abilities as road course drivers. I think it's the cars that maybe they have right now. Okay. That was just kind of the reaction. Just because we know Ryan Blaney's a good road course driver. We've seen it from him. We know Brad Keselowski, even though he doesn't have a win on road courses, he's had his moments. And I think it's been like Joey Logano's been the only good Penske car on road courses throughout the season. Cendrick's been good at moments, but then we've also seen mechanical failures, issues for them later in races. And that even trickles down to Matt DiBenedetto in the 21 car earlier in the season. They were atrocious on road courses. At Road America and Watkins Glen with Jonathan Hassler in there, they've been a lot better. But as a whole, Penske hasn't been very good on road courses with the exclusion of Joey Logano in that conversation. So once they figure it out, I think Ryan Blaney is an awesome candidate for road courses. But my God, they have not been able to figure it out. Like, let's not forget earlier this season, the first race we technically had, Ryan Blaney was right there at the front when we're talking about the Busch Clash way back. But they just have had no speed whatsoever this season on road courses. And that's a couple of years now that they've kind of struggled a little bit. But Blaney, when you look previous to that, has had some great results. So I don't doubt that he has it in him. It's just kind of the cars haven't been there. So don't really know what's happening. But to your point there, absolutely not plays this weekend. I don't care whether you got 10 usages left on them or 1. They're not really in consideration for me this weekend.
Okay. Glad we're in agreement on that. The final 2 for the stay away froms. I had him in here last weekend, kind of proved me wrong to an extent, but I still just don't like him as a road course driver. Kevin Harvick. I don't know. I think you could probably put him in your lineup if you wanted to. The
one thing that I'll say to Harvick is that they're stage point racing. And so they're kind of in that same conversation as Reddick, where they need those stage points. And if he has a decent enough car, we can see them getting those kind of decent finishes and decent point stays like we kind of saw at Watkins Glen. So I have him in consideration a little bit more, and in that kind of group was Tyler Reddick versus what you normally would for Harvick. But I agree to a certain extent there.
Yeah. If there's no new winner this weekend, I don't feel anything in jeopardy for the 4-car. Like I don't think.
But they won't know that going into the finish of the second stage.
Fair enough, but he has to qualify well, and he's not quite the greatest qualifier. I think he's been helped on these road courses.
Pretty sure he qualified well at Coda. I don't remember where they started at.
But that was in the rain, though. I mean, I can't equate that. What's
the forecast?
Is it meant to rain this weekend?
I don't know. I genuinely don't know.
I was like, wait, what? Do you know about this? And I don't. But I don't think it's going to be raining in Indiana in August. Maybe. But for Kevin Harvick,
the rain comes on Monday.
Oh, thank God.
There are scattered thunderstorms and 60% chance on Monday. But this weekend, it looks pretty clear unless it comes early. Oh, God. But I don't, even for qualifying, I don't feel like Harvick is going to be quite there up to the pace of some of these other guys when it comes to this weekend. I think that's a safe bet, but I'd have him as more of a consideration than you do.
Okay, fair enough. And then last one, I'm just throwing him in here. Austin Dillon, just not a road course racer. He's in this really tight bubble battle with his teammate, 15 points in it. This is a huge weekend for Tyler Reddick, as I prefaced in my pick. If he gets away with some really good stake points and a top 12 finish, things are looking pretty dire for Austin Dillon in the final 2 races of the season. We're going to see a very aggressive Austin Dillon to try and make that playoff.
Still doesn't have a top 10 in his road course career in the Cup Series.
I don't know what to tell you, man. He just can't quite figure it out, even though he ran the Rolex 24
He's been better
this
year. He's been better this year,
slightly,
to be fair to him. He's worked on his craft. He's done the Xfinity races with a couple of different teams. He did the Rolex 24. Like, he's put work into his craft, and we've seen the better results, but they're still not been good enough in terms of top 10s or anything like that.
Nope. And that'll do it for the honorable mentions and the stay away froms. Mr. Cushman, bonus pick time, and you lead us off.
Yes, I do. Top Chevrolet. This is an interesting one because I do think
it's up for debate this weekend.
Well, I think it has been up for debate a little bit. I mentioned Kyle Larson last week as a bit of a toss-up with Chase Elliott here for this one. It is only 5 points. So if you wanted to go kind of against the chalk pick of Chase Elliott and get those extra 5 points, if you got it right, then that's 5 points in your pocket. If you don't have it right, well, then you're only losing 5 points. That's kind of the thought process with it. Yeah. For myself, I am going to go with Chase Elliott for this one. They just had too much speed in that car. The only reason they didn't win is because Chase Elliott screwed up and locked up his brakes, locked up the tires, had to go and pit an extra time and stuff like that. But I think if they have a clean day, even if they do start at the back because of a penalty or anything like that, which would be a very Chase Elliott thing to do this weekend, I still feel very good about them this weekend. So Elliott is going to be my guy as top Chevrolet.
Agreed on that. I'm going to go with Elliott as well. I mean, I think in a perfect world, if I was in a different situation where I didn't want to feel like I have to win 2 weekends in a row here, I'd maybe look at Kyle Larson as an option. But like you said, you made some good points there. Elliott had the fastest car on Sunday at Watkins Glen, just didn't quite have the track position to really do anything with it. He had burned his stuff up by the time he got to second place, and there's only so much he could do to chase down Kyle Larson, who's still a very, very good road course racer in his own right. So,
and it does give me some pause that Larson wasn't in the conversation as much at Road America either.
Yep, definitely. And I do think, just a quick caveat here on Larson, he is running the Knoxville Nationals this weekend, so he will be pulling the double duty. I'm not quite as confident with Larson this weekend as I was at Watkins Glen. So I think that I will say that. But we'll see what happens with Mr. Larson this weekend. He could just go out there and dominate like he did at Watkins Glen, but I feel less confident in him than Watkins Glen here at the Indy Road Course. But for the top Ford finisher, I mean, I hate to do it to the guy. You know, I hate to jinx him once again. I would be very curious to know what the number is every time I pick Joey Logano as the top Ford finisher, what that number would be, how many times he's actually been the top Ford finisher. Because I think it's been probably, you can count him on one hand. I think it's been very, very few. And every time I pick him, he has had some bad luck. And this weekend, there is the exception of maybe having an Austin Cendrick in there as the top Ford, or even a Chase Briscoe, like you said. But until I quite see that happening, Logano still won a stage at Watkins Glen on Sunday, had some circumstances go his way, i.e. Brad Keselowski wiping him out. But I'm going to go with Joey Logano still as the top Ford finisher here this weekend. I can't bet against his road course success and the 750 horsepower package success so far this season. So the 22 car goes in there as the top Ford.
Do you know who ended up being the top Ford last time?
At Watkins Glen?
Yeah.
Was it Chase Briscoe? Or no, Kevin Harvick.
It was Kevin Harvick.
Yeah, it was.
Who would have thought?
Yeah.
Who would have thought?
Yeah.
It's kind of funny how that ended up working out. But for top Ford, I am buying into the Joey Logano curse. So I am going to go with Chase Briscoe for this one for myself. I'm betting on him having that good finish at the home track, won there last time, fended off some really, really tough opposition in the Xfinity Series last year. They've been in that top 10 conversation at the end of races. I feel like the combination of home track, the success previously, practice qualifying, everything like that. I feel like this is going to be a good weekend for Briscoe. So I've got him as my top Ford here, going a little bit different just because I am starting to believe in the Logano top Ford curse on your. But
behalf. It's legit, right? Like
it's a little bit scary. I'm not going to lie. Like a Brad Keselowski torpedo, like, come on, who would have thought?
Come on. It's a domino right into him and just, brutal luck for Logano. But, you go again here, top Toyota.
I will say that I do wish I was going second for this one because it's a toss-up between Truex and Busch for myself, and I really don't know which way to go, but I am going to go Kyle Busch just to kind of cover a little bit, just because you've got him in the lineup. Truex ended up being the top Toyota last time out, but Truex's lack of success at Road America does give me some pause again this weekend. So I'm going to play Kyle as a little bit of cover in case you do take him, so you don't get like an extra 5 points if he really has a good day. So I'll play him here and feel a little bit safe doing so.
We're talking about practice. We're talking about practice, guys. This is Kyle Busch's domain. And when I look at Road America,
the points aren't decided in practice. You see,
the thing I will say though, this is the one road course where it's new this season, and Kyle Busch is not running the Xfinity Series race this weekend. He had run it at the Road America.
I will say, last time we had practice and qualifying, he still wasn't the top Toyota. But
when
Road America?
Oh, who was the top Toyota?
Christopher Bell.
Finished second. That's right. Yeah. Okay.
Just saying.
I do have Kyle Busch written down here, but I do feel like this could be a potential opportunity for me here to go somewhere else, because you did go somewhere else with Joey Logano. You went with Chase Briscoe, obviously. I'm gonna switch it up. I'm gonna switch it up and try and.
He is. Wow.
Yeah. Let's go with something different here this weekend. And
is Ty Dillon in the 96 this weekend?
Yeah. I don't think so. He's not. Okay. No. Damn, I got to figure out who I want to pick instead now. I do think Truex, I don't feel quite as confident with him this weekend.
Denny Hamlin?
You know what? Let's do it. If I'm not going to go with Kyle Busch, let's go Christopher Bell. We'll throw him in there. Top Toyota. I do feel good about this 20 car this weekend. So the pace, I think he probably had a better car than Kyle Busch at Watkins Glen, apart from just being set back.
I don't think that's necessarily a debate, really.
Yeah, probably not. I just think the strategy worked out for him to be ahead of Kyle Busch, but then he showed the pace.
He was probably the number 3 car behind Larson and Elliott.
Probably. If he got past Truex there, I think it would have been a very interesting race from then on to see how much of a battle there would have been between Larson and Bell in the final stages there. But with Christopher Bell, I do like the 20 car this weekend. I've got a funny feeling, but I do think Kyle Busch is going to be right there if it's going to be that case. But I kind of talked myself out of it. I do think having that Xfinity Series race has really helped him in terms of getting up to speed with a new track like this. But I'm going to go with C. Bell. Winning manufacturer, pretty self-explanatory for me this weekend. Chevrolet. You want to go with
there's nothing to say. It's Chevrolet and Hendrick for myself as well.
Same.
There's nothing really to really talk about with this one. Is just the obvious play on road courses. Elliott and Larson there, in addition to Byron's potential, in addition to Bowman's potential. just not worth going elsewhere. And especially for Chevrolet, you've got Allmendinger in that mix as well. You've got the Chip Ganassi cars as well. It's just, come on, too easy.
Definitely. I'm going to obviously match you on that. It's basically been the story of the season on the road courses. It's been a Hendrick 1-2 basically every time, apart from the Daytona road course. So can't go wrong with that. And obviously Road America as well. But it's just those two right now in the class of their own, it seems, when it comes to road courses. So definitely going to go with those. Larson and the Elliott thing just puts it over the top for me.
Xfinity pick time.
Yeah, I get to go first for the Xfinity series. It's a bit of a weird one for me here.
Well, but usually when we have the truck series, you get to, but
no, not really. Because I go first for the trucks and then I go first for Cup. But I never really go first for the Xfinity series. But I'm gonna stick with the guy that's the hot hand right now, 18-year-old Ty Gibbs. I say he wins this weekend just because Allmendinger and Cendrick didn't win it last year in their appearance in the Xfinity series in this race. Ty Gibbs beat them at Watkins Glen, and that's an unbelievable achievement for that young man to be Allmendinger, a Cup Series winner at that track. Maybe you can put that down to the equipment, but he has proven on a consistent basis this season he is he's a force to be reckoned with on the road courses no matter what. And winning at the Daytona road course, of course, was a big victory for him. Of course, his first victory. So I can't feel like I'm going down a wrong path picking Ty Gibbs this weekend. He may not win, but just in case he does, I'm going to be safe than sorry and pick him.
What I will say on Gibbs and Watkins Glen specifically is that Watkins Glen is the most kind of power / car dependent track that we have in terms of road courses, in terms of it not really being the technical slow portions or anything like that. And Indianapolis is a bit of a hybrid between those because you do have the really long straight and you do have some slower speed, but not like really, really slow corners and stuff like that. So it's not to take away from Ty Gibbs' ability, because I do believe that he's a very, very good driver. I'm not saying anything like that, but I do think that his kind of success over those guys on the Saturday was more so because of the car rather than him being better than Allmendinger or Cendrick or anything like that. And I kind of look at the ARCA race as an example of that. The fact that he finished third behind Austin Hill and Corey Haim in that race. And then on the Saturday went out and was clearly kind of the best car on that Saturday. But for myself here for Xfinity, I will look back to last year's race, and I will say that Allmendinger had to start near the back because he wasn't running full time. So he had to come through that. Austin Cendrick had some penalties and stuff, so he had to come through the back as well. So maybe not necessarily the Chase Briscoe show that the stats kind of ended up showing, even though he was able to hold them off at the end of the day. But I will go with Austin Cendrick for this one, for the Xfinity Series winner pick. I thought about AJ for this one, but I am going to go Cendrick. Just Penske, he owns the place now, so he's got to show up here. So I'll take Austin Cendrick here, but I do think it's going to be another stellar Xfinity Series race. Last year, the finish was just insane, and we've got more guys like Ty Gibbs here factoring in. We've got Sam Mayer here as well, who's slowly starting to find his form in that Xfinity Series car. So I'm really looking forward to that Saturday because you've got IndyCar, you've got Xfinity, and those two races are going to be absolutely bonkers. I'm looking forward to those ones.
The 54 car has won the 8 of the last 10 Xfinity Series races. Yep. That's insane. Like this, and
Kyle Busch is a factor there, but
yeah, absolutely. Like, I mean, Christopher Bell obviously won at New Hampshire, but like, that's still an impressive total for an Xfinity Series on road courses, because Kyle Busch won on road courses as well. It wasn't just on ovals,
and was dominant.
Yeah, absolutely. And beat Cendrick and Allmendinger. Like, we thought those guys were going to be absolutely the horses.
The one that I think back to is Coda, and just how insane that car was there.
Yeah, I think a lot of that comes down to the preparation. Chris Gale, I think they're giving them the best of the best right now in that 54 car, which makes sense. You've got Kyle Busch, your Cup Series star, Christopher Bell, your future Cup Series star, and Ty Gibbs, obviously Joe Gibbs' grandson. Like, that's a pretty strong trio in terms of giving them the equipment they need to succeed at the Xfinity level and win and prove what they are capable of doing. So huge weekend here at Indianapolis. But you do lead us off with the Cup Series winner pick here, Mr. Cushman. Who do you got? It's the debate, Larson or Chase Elliott.
Just finally on Ty Gibbs, I will say I'm a little bit disappointed we didn't get to see where he would have finished at Road America in that 81, because I feel like that would have been like an actual like kind of tell as to where he kind of lands, being in that extra one, not being in the 54, stuff like that. But didn't get to see it, but that's okay. So to the Cup Series, and I actually get to pick first for the first time in way too long, if we're being honest. It's kind of been stupid, the run that I went on. The bad luck that you had was insane. Like, I still don't know how you managed to lose in some of the fashions that you did, whether it be disqualifications, flat tires, whatever it may be, you found a way to lose with it. And so here we are going into Indianapolis, and I am going to take Chase Elliott as the race winner here. Just simply put, can't give you the option to take him. He was the fastest car last time out. They kind of beat themselves a little bit. Assuming they don't make those same mistakes again this weekend. We're going to a new place. The last time we went to a new place with practice qualifying, Chase Elliott came all the way from the back to win the race. So Chase Elliott going to be the race winner for myself. And I think it's a little bit of a surprise if he doesn't win it, to be honest, this weekend.
Yeah, I can agree with that statement there. Of course, the one weekend.
And also, I wouldn't have maybe said that it was between Elliott and Larson to the same extent that it was last time.
Okay. Who are you thinking is the other guy? Just out of curiosity.
I don't have a clear-cut number 2, and that's why I'm interested to see where you go. Just because the last, like at Road America, Larson was kind of in that top 5, but wasn't necessarily as good. He was fading a little bit. And so I don't think that he's maybe the necessarily clear-cut number 2 or number 1 candidate like he has been. Watkins Blaney has the past experience, all this kind of stuff. So I'm interested to see where you go for this one. I might have still leaned Larson as the number 2 guy just because of the prowess, but let's see where you go.
Yeah, let's see where I go.
You're letting me stall for you this time.
You want to keep going there while I try and figure this out?
I think you should. If you don't make a pick, I think we're going to have to give you like Bubba Wallace or something.
Yes, Bubba Wallace.
Noted extremely good road course racer.
How about Austin Dillon? Maybe we give that a go. You know, the thing is, like, Larson has been so dominant, like on road courses when he's good. You know, there's been no question. Like, he won at Sonoma 60 freaking points. Like, that was insane to watch what he did there. I did say last weekend, if I was in your position, I would have picked Kyle Busch because I did feel confident in him that much. And he was good, but he wasn't that good where I feel like he could potentially win on the road course. You know what? Let's not go with Larson this weekend. Let's switch it up.
Oh, he's not. Okay.
Let's switch it up.
I still would have stuck with it, even though I don't love him as much as I did at Watkins Glen, but
I'm going to switch it up. I'm going to go to the JGR stable for this one. I'm going to go with the very own Christopher Bell.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Christopher Bell wins this weekend for his second career Cup Series victory. I feel good about the 20 car.
Okay.
Kyle Busch just hasn't quite had the road course winning ability this season. And I think what I saw at Road America there, Christopher Bell had some pretty good speed at the end of that race. Mm-hmm. If it comes down to it, this is a little bit of, you know, a bit of a trickier one for me to call, like the Daytona road course was a little bit. I feel like it's a little bit more up in the air. That turn 1, man, scares me a bit. And somebody's going to send it in there. It's going to take somebody out 100%.
It's going to take a lot of somebodies.
Whether it's on the restart or something else. But I don't know. I've got a funny feeling about this 20 car this week. And I think practice will do Adam Stevens well with the 20 car. And I think there'll be a pretty nice duo. I'm just not quite 100% sold on Kyle Larson this weekend.
So we're taking the first and second place guys from Road America.
Yeah, big swing, hey? Yeah. But yeah, I just wanted to go something different. I haven't been able to do that for a while.
I love it.
You could have. I've been kind of stuck in a bubble here where I feel like if I didn't take the race winner pick, I would have been like out to lunch. But I feel like it's just too predictable. I think it's been too easy for the Hendrick cars on the road courses for a little bit now. Maybe they'll spice things up and then go back to the first race winner on the road course this season in C. Bell. But we have one more category to go here, Kyle. Let's not forget.
We do.
Who wins the poll for the penultimate time this season?
You go first for this.
What?
Yeah.
Why do I go first?
Because I just went first for the winner pick.
Oh, shoot. I'm so used to going first for the winner. Oh, my God. For the
No
poll,
way.
Yeah.
I
set you up for a big one there, and I just totally flubbed it. Poll, William Byron. Move on. Yeah.
Okay. Will he be?
Yeah.
He's going back to back?
Back to back for the polls. The guy just is so good on single lap speed on road courses. I was thinking about Tyler Reddick, but I'm going to go with William Byron.
Okay. See, originally I was thinking Kyle Larson, but I don't know. I just don't feel like it's going to be the Kyle Larson show as much this weekend. So do I want to stick with I think William Byron, is probably the betting favorite. But where do I want to go?
Still points up for grab, buddy.
You went Christopher Bell. So I'll go with a bit of a swing as well. I'll say AJ Allmendinger grabs the pole.
I like it.
He qualified third right there at the front at Road America.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to have Xfinity the previous day. Why not? I'll say AJ Allmendinger grabs it in the 16 colleague car.
I like it a lot. Shall we go through our lineups one more time for the listeners and viewers at home? I'll lead us off for this one since I am the defending winner. I usually go second for this one, but I'm going to milk it as long as I can because it may not happen for the rest of the season. This may be my only chance. So my lineup for this Sunday is Chase Elliott, Kyle Busch, Martin Truex Jr., Christopher Bell, Joey Logano, and Tyler Reddick. For the bonus picks, top Chevrolet, Chase Elliott, top Ford, Joey Logano, top Toyota, Christopher Bell, winning manufacturer Chevrolet, winning organization Hendrick Motorsports. For the Xfinity Series on the Saturday, I'm saying Ty Gibbs brings it home yet again in the 54 car. And then on Sunday, Christopher Bell gets his second career Cup Series victory. But on the poll on the Sunday morning as well, I'm going to say William Byron brings it home for the 24 car for Hendrick Motorsports.
Alrighty, I've got Chase Elliott, Martin Truex Jr., Joey Logano, Christopher Bell as well, going different with Chase Briscoe taking the swing on the Indiana native with William Byron as well in my lineup. Hoping for that good starting position there.
Please let the jinx work.
For the bonus picks, Chase Elliott, top Chevy, taking the swing as well for Chase Briscoe, thinking about the Logano curse there for top Ford.
You're welcome.
And Kyle Busch for top Toyota, Chevy Hendrick manufacturer organization. Again, obvious picks there. Taking the swing on Austin Cendrick on the Saturday with Chase Elliott on the Sunday with AJ Allmendinger grabbing the pole earlier on Sunday as well.
I do like your bonus picks more than mine. So if it does come down to that, and our lineups are very close after the first two stages,
I will say I do hope William Byron grabs that pole award and goes away and gets a stage win off the top. That would be very nice for me, but we all know that's not going to happen.
Well, yeah, hopefully it doesn't happen because I hope I just reverse jinxed it and whatever voodoo.
He grabs the pole, he stays up front, and then he pits with 1 lap to go, and then it's game or 2 laps to go. But
whatever it is, it's going to be a very interesting weekend. NASCAR making its debut on the road course for the Cup Series.
Yep.
At Indianapolis Motor Speedway. To finish off the show, let's just discuss that really quickly, Kyle. The debate, it's been kind of going on social media. Should we have gone to the Oval this year? Should we be going to the road course as we are going this weekend? What are your thoughts on this whole thing this weekend? Do you think that it's definitely a good thing that we're giving this a try, or are you more of a historical kind of or not that we should go back to the bricks and the Oval?
I'd lean towards going to the Oval. I don't hate them making this decision. I think it'll be a fun race. I'm excited to see how it goes, especially with how great the finish was to the Xfinity Series race last year. But I do think the way the schedule has kind of gone, there was almost too many road courses right away for the schedule. And that wasn't helped with Auto Club having to turn into the Daytona road course. But the way that ended up going, it's a little bit heavy on the regular season in terms of road courses. Just given when you look at the playoffs and how there's 10 races in one road course versus the regular season and how there's 6 or whatever it is. But I will say I'm excited to see how it goes. That said, I would prefer that they do stay on the oval. I think that that Indianapolis Motor Speedway is something extremely, extremely special. I think it got too much hate in terms of the Cup Series product because of the lack of attendance. And even though it wasn't like the Indy 500 or anything, it was decent racing. So what I would say is that I would like to see a return to the oval. It was a crown jewel race. It should maintain that status because it is going to one of the most famous places in motorsports. And you're an oval series. You should be going to the oval on one of the most famous ovals in motorsports. So that's what I'll say on that. I'm not heartbroken or anything like that they're going to the road course, but I would prefer that they stay on the oval for a multitude of reasons.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you on that. As per usual, we're thinking very much the same way. This is I feel like maybe a little bit more strongly than you on this with the road course and the oval. I would much prefer to see them on the oval. I think it got a little bit too much hate.
Yeah, the only reason why maybe I'm a little bit softer is just because the Indianapolis road course is so interesting for these cars and stuff like that. So like the alternative is still an interesting alternative. So I'm relatively fine with it. But again, when you factor in the history and everything like that, I would much prefer them be on the oval as well.
Like, I just don't look at this as a crown jewel weekend right now. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't
No, it's absolutely not. No.
Like, there's no significance to this weekend now compared to what the Brickyard 400 used to be.
Realistically, the Brickyard probably shouldn't have been a crown jewel either, just because it wasn't a NASCAR history thing. But you know, I could see why it became that, or why it was deemed that because of how it came into the sport and stuff like that. But like, it's not like this is going away from something that they've been doing since the 50s. This is something that they tried in the 90s. It worked well for a while. They had the tire debacle in the mid 2000s, and they kind of suffered because of that. They're trying some stuff here. But I think long-term, I think a lot of people would prefer them return to the oval, or even go to IRP if they're going to stay in that area, maybe not stay on the oval, and then go to other road courses rather than go to the Indianapolis one.
If I see pictures where they're kissing the bricks, I'm going to be pretty upset because that's
no, you still do it.
No, but it's not the same. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like,
but this is the only time the Cup Series. Like, come on.
It's a road course.
Did Briscoe do it last year?
I don't know if he did.
I don't know. So
if you do, I think it's a bit questionable because it's not the same significance.
Well, what other opportunity would they have to do it? That's the only.
That's their fault for putting the schedule.
It's their fault for not going to open wheel.
It's their fault for not going on the oval, in my opinion, at least. Like, I think winning at the Brickyard, winning on the oval is something should be cherished, and it's a tradition. You should
like
be able
when F1 went there, did they kiss the bricks? I don't know.
I have no idea, but for me, I feel like the oval was a pretty good product. It wasn't perfect, obviously, but I think it did present some opportunities for some good racing at times. And when it was good racing, I think it was pretty spectacular. Just hearing the fans roar, and it's a totally unique oval as well. It's not like it's your cookie cutter oval. It's absolutely 4 unique corners, 4 distinct corners in itself. And one, even though they may look the same from an aerial view, they're run a little bit differently as well. It's a very unique place, and I think it holds a lot of tradition to it. So I would much prefer to see them on the oval, especially with how oversaturated the road courses are this season, in my opinion.
I wouldn't say oversaturated, but
I'd say you don't need. Obviously, the Daytona road course wasn't scheduled, and this one, I think that's 2. I think 5 is a good amount considering we had
two or disagree there. 2
or 3 would be was what we had before, right? So I think that's fine, but I think 5 to 6 ranges is at max for me.
I'd say 7's a good number. You just need to spread them out more. Like, you need 2 in the playoffs. You can't have it where 6 are in the regular season and then only 1 are in the playoffs. You can't have it that way. But
we'll discuss this probably a little bit more, but I would rather have more short tracks than road courses, essentially. I think that'd be the case for you as well. But
the only issue is that you don't have enough good short tracks.
If you bring Iowa on, maybe you could figure something out. I don't know. I mean, that's just obviously just spitballing here, but I do think that there's a place for the Indianapolis Oval on the schedule, and the fact that it's not on there is a bit of a shame, in my opinion. We'll see what happens this weekend. It could be a fantastic race. It may change my opinion to an extent, but I still feel more strongly that the Oval would be a more welcome or addition or a mainstay on the calendar than what the Indianapolis road course is going to be.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Okay, I think that'll do it for today's episode. Make sure to go follow us on Instagram at The Green Flag Pod, as well as Twitter at The Green Flag Pod. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it. We'd really, really appreciate it. It's been a fun couple of months here with the growth on the channel. This is the penultimate episode with myself here back out west in BC. Gonna be flying out to Toronto in a couple of weeks' time. So next week will be the last time you see this set up for at least until the Christmas break. And then
there's
Kyle's
something cruel about the fact that the last time we're going to get that set up is going into a Michigan race weekend. It's
my least favorite track on the entire
I know,
calendar.
It's too perfect.
It's
too perfect.
So brutal that that's when it's scheduled, but it is what it is. And we'll set it all back up in Toronto as much as I can. And Kyle will be back in his hometown of Strath Vegas next week. So we'll have a little bit of a unique setup for the final 2 weeks. This is the final time.
Yeah,
we'll see both of these setups for at least a long time.
Next week's going to be something because you're going to get the last one for your setup. And then we're going to get a laptop episode from me for the first time in forever back home in Strathroy. So it's going to be a weird setup, but we'll figure it out and we'll make it work for the great race that is Michigan International Speedway.
Yeah, really great freaking Michigan. Oh, Jesus. Oh, okay. Well, that's for next week. We'll discuss.
Let's hope
Michigan.
We have some good news to talk about.
Exactly, and I believe F1 returns next weekend as well. If I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong on that.
Double check. They return on August the 29th. So I think you're the weekend after that.
2 weeks. Yeah. Oh, perfect. That'll be great. When I come back, I'm going to be setting up like a maniac and we're going to have to do 2 episodes. But nonetheless, it's been a fun one here today, breaking down the Indianapolis road course, a doubleheader weekend for IndyCar and NASCAR for the first time. And it's going to be one heck of a race at the Indianapolis road course this weekend. So make sure you come back to the channel. We'll preview Michigan next weekend as best as we can with the setting circumstances, but enjoy the racing this weekend, everybody.